All right, and we back on the forecast. Now, as brothers, at some point, we are going to have to understand that when we deal with white women, a lot of strange things start to happen and people end up getting killed. And most times, it's one of us. How many times do we have to see history repeat itself before we learn? Back in 1891 in Omaha, Nebraska, a black man named Joe Coe, also known as George Smith, was brutally beaten and then lynched after a 5-year-old white girl, Lizzie Yates, accused him of assaulting her even though he was a married man with 2 kids of his own. This man had an alibi with witnesses that accounted for his whereabouts. They had no evidence against him, but they still arrested him. Then before they even reached a guilty verdict in court, rumors began to spread the little white girl had died and this black man will only spend 20 years in jail and that he was getting away with it. And soon a mob of 1,000 whites started to gather at the jail. And then the mob started to grow to anywhere up to 10,000 people who were going to make sure they lynched them themselves. Led by a local elected councilman, the mob broke into the jail using streetcar rails and pulled his brother Joe Coe out of his cell and started to brutally beat him. Then they tied a rope to a car and put it around his neck and started driving him around the town. They drug him all the way to the little white girl's house so the mom could identify him. She said she saw him roaming around her house, but refused to swear it was him. So then the mob dragged him with their car by the neck back to the courthouse to have a picnic where thousands showed up cheering to watch him get lynched. And as his body hung from the streetcar cable, they even gave speeches while his body was still hanging right there beside them. Now this brother Joe Coe had 3 broken vertebrae and 16 bodily wounds, and he was most likely dead before he was even lynched. But then the mob took pieces of his body and pieces of the rope as souvenirs. The next day, they had his body for public viewing, and 6,000 white spectators showed up. There were some even out there selling pieces of his body and pieces of the rope as a keepsake. Now, they eventually arrested 7 whites, including the police chief, but a white mob threatened to destroy the jail if they didn't let him go because they were on code. Then during the trial, the coroner said this brother Joe Coe died of fright. He didn't die from being beaten or being drugged by the neck with a car or from being lynched. The coroner said he was scared to death and everybody was found innocent. And then years later, the little white girl Lizzie Yates admitted she lied. But of course, she wasn't punished and nobody was ever punished. And yet, after all this time, we still don't learn our lesson. We still end up with situations like what happened with the young brother Isaiah Lewis. Now, let's see how this young 17-year-old brother in Oklahoma ended up getting shot by the Edmond Police.
Details about the hours and minutes leading up to the second 2 Edmond police officers shot and killed a nude 17-year-old. We've been following this story since Monday. Lewis's girlfriend saying her boyfriend went crazy and then turned violent. Officers spent nearly an hour searching for him in a neighborhood as more calls came in about the man running through backyards. It all came to an end inside the home of a complete stranger. Lewis was shot dead, but tonight his family and a prominent activist group speaking out. News 4's Peyton Yeager live outside the Edmond Police Department with the story. Peyton.
Jolene, Lewis's family held a press conference today, and just moments later, Edmond Police released new dash cam footage of the scene unfolding. And as all this new information becomes public, everyone involved is wondering what happened in those moments before Lewis died.
They don't get to assassinate my son's character.
The character of 17-year-old Isaiah Lewis is all his mother says she has left to remember.
He doesn't get to graduate May 18th like he could have. He didn't go to the prom.
Monday afternoon, 2 women ran to a neighbor's house begging for help.
2 girls, or 2 white ladies, and I guess their boyfriend is beating up on one of them.
One of them, Lewis's girlfriend, Kamri Pollock, one of the last people to see Lewis alive. Pollock telling 911 her boyfriend was not acting like himself.
You can come to my house and check everything out, but my boyfriend just flipped out. I have no idea what's going on.
Lewis's mother saying she'd never met Pollock before.
I don't think it's appropriate at this point to even have any contact with that young lady right now.
Witnesses say they saw Lewis throwing drugs over fences and running naked through backyards before breaking into a stranger's home. 56-year-old Sergeant Milo Box and 24-year-old Officer Denton Sherman hot on his trail. Edmond Police say at some point fists started flying.
Both officers were violently assaulted in this confrontation inside the house.
After tasing Lewis, police say they were forced to shoot.
Fired, shots fired.
Lewis and an officer rushed to the hospital.
After the fact, at the scene, that both were visibly injured.
Lewis died later that afternoon.
He was not armed. And he didn't deserve to die in the way that he did. He didn't deserve to die, period.
News of his death reaching activists with Black Lives Matter, who also spoke out.
I would think that a police department and law enforcement will be trained to handle situations like that.
Edmond Police and Lewis's family both desperate to piece together what happened and why.
We want answers. We want the truth. Everybody deserves to know what happened.
Lewis's girlfriend claims that no drugs were involved. Edmond investigators tell us they did find drug paraphernalia on the scene. Edmond Police Department also releasing today those 2 officers inside the home were not wearing body cameras.
So all of this started after 2 white girls, including his girlfriend, Kamri Pollock, ran next door to the neighbor screaming for help, claiming his young brother Isaiah Lewis just flipped out of nowhere and started assaulting them. Now, I don't know what was going on with this young brother, if he was having a mental breakdown, if it had something to do with drugs, or what kind of opioids these white girls had. Although his girlfriend Kamri Pollock denies they had any drugs, but the police said they found drug paraphernalia, and they claim he threw drugs over a fence. But something was going on with this young brother Isaiah Lewis that made him run around the neighborhood naked. When the police, Sergeant Milo Box and Officer Denton Sherman, confronted him, they claimed he became violent and attacked them. They said they tried to use a stun gun multiple times, but the brother kept fighting. Then they said one of those cops was forced to fire multiple times, killing his young brother, despite him being unarmed and not even having on any clothes. So they can't say they thought he had a weapon. And even though this brother was clearly going through something, they claimed they feared for their lives and had no other choice. Of course, neither cop had a body camera, but they claimed one of the cops had to go to the hospital. And they tried to make it sound like they rushed him, like whatever happened to him was equivalent to this kid getting shot. That's how they stay on code, trying to justify this shooting. And of course, these 2 cops got their paid vacation.
Police, they met with the media today to walk us through those moments officers decided to shoot the 17-year-old. Lewis was rushed to the hospital where he died from his injuries. His girlfriend and his classmates tell News 4 they're just trying to piece together this confusing story.
I feel like I'm about to wake up from a dream right now.
The 2 girls, they're 2 white ladies, and I guess their boyfriend is beating up on one of them.
You're hearing a woman call 911 after her neighbors ran to her front porch in a panic. She then hands the phone to Kamri Pollock.
You can come to my house and check everything out, but my boyfriend just flipped out. I have no idea what's going on.
Pollock tells the 911 operator her boyfriend Isaiah Lewis was acting off Monday afternoon.
I just want to know, what he was on.
Moments later, just blocks away from the first call, reports of a man running in the street and hopping backyard fences nearby. Caller said the man was naked.
Headed westbound. Now he's in the creek.
Police searched for more than an hour before spotting him breaking into the home of a complete stranger.
Fired, shots fired.
An Edmond officer forced to shoot after a fight broke out between Lewis and police.
Our use of force training initially would be hands-on and then deploy the taser, and we know that both of those happened.
One officer was injured, suffering a head injury. He has been released from the hospital. We're told both officers involved are on paid leave. Meanwhile, Lewis's friends telling News 4 they knew their friend in a different light.
I was never mad, and if you were ever having a bad day, no problems. It was there to make you happy.
Police, Lewis's family, and Pollock all in communication as the investigation into what happened inside this Edmond home begins.
I'm just going to miss him a lot. I didn't want to believe that it was true, and I still, am in denial.
Witnesses say they saw Lewis throwing drugs over a fence. Police confirming drug paraphernalia was found. The Edmond Police Department not telling us when this investigation will be completed. And they say they do not know if those 2 officers inside the home were wearing body cameras.
Now, his girlfriend, Kamri Pollock, later said she saw no reason for the police to be involved, even though she was the one who involved them in the first place. And then she said she just wanted to know what kind of drugs he was on, as if he wasn't with her the whole time. And there's no telling what kind of opioids they gave this young brother to make him wild out like that. And now this 17-year-old brother is dead because the classic story of America. The big bad black man, high and lusting after white women, goes crazy and are dangerous and must be killed. And with the history of America, this young brother didn't have a chance.
Very high. Isaiah Lewis's parents and their attorney spoke to the press in detail about this new federal civil rights lawsuit filed in Oklahoma County. The family surrounded by local activist groups and friends who say this case, it's just getting started.
Isaiah Lewis was murdered by a racist killer Edmonton, Oklahoma cop.
A spectacle of a news conference hosted by Andrew Stroth, a civil rights lawyer from Chicago.
Filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the city of Edmond, Oklahoma, and the two officers who unjustifiably shot and killed Isaiah Lewis.
Stroth represents Vicki Lewis. Her son, 17-year-old Isaiah, shot and killed by Edmond Police after they say he attacked his girlfriend and then broke into a stranger's home.
Stated that he was acting irrational and abnormal and was stripping off clothing and running down the street.
Police followed Lewis inside where a fight broke out. They say they tried tasing him several times but were forced to shoot. One of the officers injured in the scuffle, but neither were wearing body cameras. Wednesday's lawsuit claims Lewis had a mental health breakdown and that the officers elevated his anxiety.
The officers knew that Isaiah was in crisis. The officers knew he was unarmed.
But this mental health crisis is one the family denied just days after the shooting.
No, he did not have a mental health history.
Prior to Lewis's death, witnesses say the high school senior was running through backyards naked and appeared to be under the influence. Police also say they found drug paraphernalia near the scene. The topic of drugs also brought up during Wednesday's event.
There's no excuse for a young man, 17 years old, having a mental or drug-induced behavior to have died.
But Stroth and Lewis's mother later denied drugs being involved.
Listen, the autopsy.
That didn't come from us. That didn't come from any experts. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, the autopsies take 8 to 12 weeks. We do not have the toxicology report.
The family also calling out the city of Edmond. Lewis's parents say they requested a meeting to discuss the investigation. City officials offering their condolences but respectfully declined to meet, stating the Lewis family was given the opportunity to meet with police during the investigation but chose not to.
What were they going to say? That he's dead? I already knew that. What would be the point of talking to them?
The Edmond city manager and the Edmond Police Department say the investigation is now in the hands of the Oklahoma County District Attorney. The DA tells News 4 he can't speak on the issue as the investigation is still ongoing. However, Lewis's attorney argues this lawsuit should allow evidence to be brought forward to the family's attention as soon as possible.
Now they're already trying to find every excuse in the world to justify this young brother being shot and murdered. Even though he was clearly unarmed, he didn't even have on any clothes. Just 2 months before, was able to peacefully arrest a white teenager who shot both of his parents to death. And he was fully clothed, but they were able to arrest him without a problem. You have people like the thug Grady Wayne Williams. This white boy shot at least 3 cops, killing 1 and injuring another 2 cops. But they were still able to arrest him peacefully.
We have breaking news in a deadly police shooting in Alabama. The suspected gunman, 29-year-old Grady Wayne Wilkes, was taken into custody this morning. He is accused of killing 1 police officer and wounding 2 others. The incident happened last night at a mobile home park in Auburn. Police say the suspect opened fire when officers responded to a domestic disturbance. One of the injured officers is in critical condition.
These cops went into a trailer park and were able to peacefully arrest this cop killer. But the 17-year-old unarmed brother, who didn't even have any clothes on, so they can't say they thought he had a gun, and his white girlfriend, Kamri Pollock, trying to play both sides of the fence. Now we have to teach our kids, especially our sons, the danger they are in. And they have to understand the situation they are in. Ida B. Wells broke down the lynch law over 130 years ago. But we still have cases like this popping up. A lot of the black men that were lynched back then over white women had consensual relationships with the white women. And sometimes the white woman even told the truth about it. But it didn't matter. They still murdered him for even messing with a white woman. And this young brother, Isaiah Lewis, didn't have a chance. He was a victim of American history. This story has been told so many times, and we gotta stop repeating the cycle. If you feel like you just have to date a white person, destroy white supremacy first. Then you can date whoever you want to date. But until then, we have to understand the pattern of history and realize how many times messing with white women has gotten people killed, especially black men. And at the end of the day, we are all we got. If we don't put our differences aside and get on code and do what we have to do, we're going to continue to get the same results, and our blood is going to continue to be shed.
Valentine's Day heart stick. Ah!
Here's me and my meat. They thought it was, they thought that it was soaked in lime juice overnight and it was already cooked, so. Why would you put meat in lime juice? I don't know.
This is Alabama Boss, and we're going to be talking about steak. This right here is a fresh ribeye. We marinated it, it's ready. A lot of people out there getting ready. Summer's firing up. Grills are getting hot. Charcoal grills, by the way. And you have a lot of people that cannot stand pink in their steak. So this is something I wanted to address, that a lot of people think if you got a little pink in it, you're gonna get sick. Let's just stop worrying about that, because if you get a good cut of beef from the butcher or wherever you're at, you can just eat it. You don't have to even cook it. It's fine. It's actually better for you. You get the good bacteria in your system. If you want a steak that's well done, just buy a bag of beef jerky and microwave it or whatever and chew on that, because that's what you're getting.
I mean, this is what you're talking about. This is the situation that we're in right now. How is this? What you're proposing is have more babies. That's it, right?
Exactly. You know, and I often say it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek tweet, in that I didn't expect anyone to actually conceive a child based on a tweet. But at the same time, I was trying to draw attention in a slightly humorous way to a very real problem, and that is that whites currently do not have a replacement rate when it comes to our births. And by some estimations, we are scheduled for complete extinction in 300 years. And if you're thinking about that in terms of like historically, that's not very long. So we really need to get on this and decide whether or not we want to have white people in the future of the world.
So the recent data now shows that deaths among whites outnumbering births among whites. What drives this? Tell us more about it.
Yes, what you find is with this dynamic is really an aging of the white population. You're talking about 20% of whites being 65 and older, median age of about 45. So you can imagine what the place in the life course, what people are doing at 45. They're already outside of the childbearing ages, which is 15 to 44, what demographers suggest as that category. So you already have women, for example, that are over age 44, and then you also have a decline in the fertility rate that has taken place, particularly with the impact of the Great Recession, really impacted not only white women, but other women as well from other racial and ethnic groups. But it had a particularly strong impact on the white women because of the aging, and there's fewer white women who are producing children. There's now 35% of women, females, are 15 to 44 years of age. So it is these dynamics then that are producing an older age population for whites, where you have very few individuals in the younger age categories. The white population, you already have more elderly than you have children in that population.
Well, here's a takeaway, and I think a simple way of saying some of this. If the current trends continue, by 2045, the nation will be less than 50% white. True?
Correct. Yes.
And the political implications of this, Dr. Sines, are very significant.
This lady literally just pulled a gun because we out here and didn't have reservations for a lake that we didn't even know we had to have reservation for. We didn't know. The only thing you had to do was tell us. We didn't know, man. We didn't know. The only thing you had to do was tell us to leave. We would have left. You did not have to pull a gun.
Well, I'm just telling you, you need to leave.
We're leaving.
Because it's under private ownership.
Well, that's all you had to say. That's all you had to say.
Y'all just can't be out here.
Well, that's fine.
They will not let you. They're the ones that have it.
That's fine. You can feel the intents behind it, you know. And so I felt it. I felt the heat from it. I felt it in her eyes. I knew exactly what it was.
Jessica Richardson says she and her husband were looking to spend the holiday weekend picnicking with their dog, possibly even renting a cabin. She says they Googled a nearby Campgrounds of America location and decided to drive there. And that's when things took a turn for the worse.
She jumped out, and the gun was pointed at me, my husband, and our dog. It was just pointing at us. And one finger was on the trigger. The other finger was on the, I always forget the
on the lever.
On the lever of the revolver.
Richardson says that's when she pulled out her cell phone. The woman holding the gun identified herself as the property manager, but her choice of words were less than professional.
She was just like, get, you don't belong here, you don't belong here, you don't belong here.
Richardson says the confrontation was shocking.
Time stopped, everything stopped.
Yeah, I was confused with what was going on.
Right.
I mean, we ain't like we were posed to threat to anybody. We're out there walking our dog. I mean, there's nothing harmful about that.
The fact that she used get like we were a dog. You know, you say get to a stray dog that's on your porch. And that get got to me more than you don't belong here.
On the way out, they spoke to another campground employee outside of the office who turned out to be the woman's husband.
So I get out, start talking to him, and he says, first thing he says, oh no, you don't need a reservation for the lake. And then she pulls up, when she flies, pulling up, hops out the car, and then proceeded to yell at my wife.
Get in the car, get in the car.
You get in the car, you need to get back in the car, and like cussing her out, and she's not even saying anything.
With signs at the front entrance and two different stories from employees, the Richardsons were confused, horrified, and disappointed. The Army National Guard sergeant recently returned home from a 9-month deployment in the Middle East.
It's kind of crazy. You go over there, don't have a gun pointed at you, and come back here, and the first thing happens, you have a gun pointed at you. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about.
Magnums are the racist condom. So historically, black men have been hypersexualized in our culture. It's been used as justification for slavery, lynching, all kinds of things. Oh, we got to protect those pure white women from those black men who can't control their sexuality, right? When in reality, it was white men that were raping black women. Black men didn't have access to white women, right? But we equate virility with penis size. And so there's this myth in our culture that black men have bigger penises because we're hypersexualizing them. But it's totally not true. But if you look at Magnum, all of their marketing is towards people who are African American. Because they get more, they charge significantly more for the Magnum, they're super thick, they feel like having sex with a garbage bag, and they're not more effective. But black men, because they're insecure because of our culture, think that this is their only option.
Right.
When it's just racist bullshit.
Oh, damn.
Asian men are stereotyped as having small penises. Also not true. This started at the time of the Vietnam War. One of the justifications that we used for invading Vietnam was that their men were too effeminate. that they needed our manly culture to man them up, right? And so we equate masculinity with penis size. So Asians are stereotyped as having small penises, which is absolutely not true.
That's crazy.
Penis size does not follow race.
That's crazy. Because I'm definitely one of those people that's like, I believe that shit. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's messing with my daughter. She's a girl. Y'all are boys, okay? If y'all bully my daughter, if you look at her the wrong way, if you breathe the wrong way, send your mom to me. Sisters, aunts, anybody over 18, I'll fuck them all up. Do you understand me? Leave my daughter alone, and I'm not going to say it again. If I have to go to every class, I'll do that. And I'm letting you know right now, any mom, any sister can catch these hands, okay? That's
Period.
how pissed I am. Y'all gonna leave her alone. I mean, no messages online, don't post nothing about her. None of that. None of that. Y'all don't know me. Y'all think y'all bullies? I'm the big bully, okay? Let that be known and understand that. Leave my daughter alone, and I mean it. And if I have to come up here again, it's gonna be problems. She's a girl, she can't handle that. Because y'all are boys. If y'all was girls, I'd tell her to meet you after school and handle it outside like a real one. But since you guys are boys and she can't do anything, tell your moms, tell your sisters, tell your aunties, cousins, whoever. As long as we're over 18, we can handle it any day. You understand that? You don't pick them up. Ass whippings for free. For free. You ain't even gotta pay for it. For free. Do y'all understand me? Leave this girl alone. She's taken care of. You won't play that, okay? And I'm not gonna call out no names, but you're gonna leave her alone, and I mean it.
Watch out for the baby!
Worked at Hewlin Mall in Fort Worth. Bradley Blackburn says this all began over hot dogs.
Tonight on Facebook, it's been shared thousands of times, the video from the second floor of Hewlin Mall looking down at Auntie Anne's. In the video, a mall security guard has handcuffs ready, but then the struggle with a woman who is visibly pregnant. A man and child watching it all.
Watch out for the baby!
It happened last Friday. Fort Worth police called after this fight. The woman was upset her hot dogs were burned. Auntie Anne's employees say she threw them in the store. But it's the actions of the guard that are being questioned by many online. He told police he pepper sprayed this woman after she began punching him. Eventually, she was detained. She said she was not injured, but she was upset the guard didn't try to defuse the situation. We reached out to Hewlin Mall, who sent us to their security company, Allied Universal. They said their guard, quote, did not use the correct protocol in dealing with one of Auntie Anne's customers, and the employee involved has been terminated. No charges were filed against the guard or the woman, but this video now spreading widely, and questions about the force used over hot dogs.
Come here! Where's the people? Where's the people? Where are they? In the car, sir. Oh, in their car. What's going on, guys? Stop break. Look over there. Yo, get the out. You. Get out.
Hey, don't do it, don't do it. Hey, it's not worth it. Bro, it's not worth it, bro. Hey, it's not, hey, let him go, let him go, let him go, let him go. Hey.
That's right, Mark. Diners tell me things got so intense inside this restaurant. They were here for a nice family dinner, but once those punches were thrown, they tell me that everyone got up and started clapping. This is not what comes to mind when you think of Mother's Day.
Hey!
But for families celebrating the holiday to Burry Sushi in Long Beach on Sunday, a customer angry about the wait time for his table started an argument with staff. Then other customers got involved.
It was wild. As soon as she punches him, it's like, is this really happening? It's a little bit uncomfortable after how, even during the situation, it was like, okay, this man he's really here. He's not happy. They're trying to calm him down. It's not working.
Ivan Velasco was having dinner with his mom and brother when the confrontation escalated from words to punches. The man who was hit reportedly told police he was punched for no reason. But Velasco's video tells a different story. You can hear the man curse at restaurant staff and then yell racist remarks at black diners. Then he's punched by one of the diners who had asked him to leave.
The remark that he says is monkey man, and the first time he says it, I mean, at the moment you understand and you felt like just the pressure in the room, it just escalated immediately. And he didn't say it once, he said it about 4 or 5 times, kept shouting it back and forth. You see him doing some chimpanzee gestures as he's saying that.
It's a family dining restaurant. There's kids involved as well. It's especially on Mother's Day, holiday was busy, but he was very disrupting our business by being aggressive towards all the staffs.
The restaurant called Long Beach Police, who tells Eyewitness News they cited a man and a woman for battery. Velasco says the disruptive diner got what he deserved and hopes his video helps the woman get out of her citation.
The racism, especially in that way, is not tolerated anywhere, especially in like this beautiful city that we call home, Long Beach. He came here, he did that. We showed him what happens to people who act in that certain way.
And the woman who threw those punches says she was actually placed in handcuffs and put inside a police car. But when so many customers went up to those officers and told them what they saw, that woman was released and given a citation.
A veteran San Antonio police officer fired over his treatment of a criminal trespass suspect last summer.
Yeah, that officer caught on his own body-worn camera repeatedly using the N-word and other profanities during the arrest of a young black man. The exchange between Officer Tim Garcia and the handcuffed suspect recorded by Garcia's own body camera. He and his partner called to River Center Mall last July to deal with Dwayne Robinson, who, according to mall security, was harassing and threatening mall customers. When Robinson later complained to Internal Affairs about excessive use of force during the arrest, supervisors discovered the officer's unprofessional behavior. It's tonight's Defenders investigation.
What's going on? Things start out calm when Officer Tim Garcia and his partner encountered Dwayne Robinson surrounded by mall security guards who had told him to leave.
They told me to walk off. I told them, all right, and I already been walked off.
My question to you is, if they tell you to leave the mall, you gonna leave the mall?
No, I don't want to.
Garcia explains to Robinson why he needs to leave.
But if they tell you to leave and you don't leave, then you're breaking the law. That's when I get involved. We cool on that?
Yeah.
Robinson begins to present his ID, but has one more question.
I ain't even did. Why y'all give me criminal trespass? What you mean? What you mean they can?
Sure.
Nah, hold up. What you mean they can?
Okay, here's the deal. I'm going to ask you to do something. I'm going to tell you that I'm going to make you.
It was one question too many.
Stop tensing up. Yes, you are.
You know what? Now you're under arrest.
That's when things take a turn.
I listened to all your stupid for like 5 minutes.
Man, that's we had a action.
You know what's bull? The way you were raised.
That's hella bullshit.
The way you were raised is bull.
As Robinson complains about being arrested, Garcia escalates the situation.
And I'm trying to put my arm back.
Trying to.
About to break, and you over here doing my shit.
Do I look like you on Say it right. Put an R at the end. If you're gonna say it, don't call me. I ain't your.
What am I going to do?
For what? For being.
A month later, Robinson complained about the officer's use of force.
All right, sis. Sorry, brother.
We good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Are you really good?
Yeah, I'm good.
We need to make sure you're good.
I'm good, bro.
Garcia defended his actions, saying he was just repeating words Robinson was saying, adding he did not use the N-word in a derogatory manner or in reference to anyone at the scene. He said he was frustrated and got caught up in the banter, admitting it was wrong.
That does not justify it or explain it away by any stretch.
Hey, here, look. This is the police. This is the police telling you. How do you like that?
Well, there are many different stories about what led up to an argument here at Hometown Furniture Store in South Haven. One thing, though, that the owner does not dispute is that he did indeed use a racial slur. He told me that it was appropriate given the circumstances. A customer captured this video Saturday. Witnesses say it shows the store's owner, Terry Pace, cursing and using a racial slur at black customers.
I couldn't believe it. I mean, you know, you hear people like on TV saying these things and all that. Just to hear it though in person, like just so aggressively, it was really off-putting.
A sign in the window said the store was closed today, so we went to Pace's home for answers.
I don't care what they say. I did what I felt like was right. You weren't there. You didn't hear it. You didn't hear all the stuff that I heard.
He admits to using the N-word, but says he was provoked and even attacked, leaving him with a black eye. Police say they were called to the store, but no report was filed.
I called them the N-word when it was over with. When it was all over with, and they kept mouthing off to me, yes, ma'am, I used the N-word.
Those who work in the plaza with him say this isn't the first time he's made offensive comments.
He was like, yeah, no, I don't finance because only people that want to get furniture finance is the colored and they don't pay their bills. Yes, this is what he told me, and I let that go.
The property manager says they've received numerous complaints about Pace, and he's only been at this location 2 months. They're hoping this incident doesn't push customers away from the plaza and other businesses.
We need to come out here and support the business. We need to come out here and support South Haven, uplift it. We don't plan on having him stay, so.
A Boston schoolteacher alleges that her 7th grade students were racially profiled during a visit to the Museum of Fine Arts. Marveline Lammy, along with several other teachers, brought 26 non-white students from the Helen V. Davis Leadership Academy to the museum to learn about history. But in a Facebook post that has gone viral, she claims the students were subjected to racist jokes and scrutiny white children present didn't experience. In the post, she writes, "At the very beginning of the tour, one of the staff gave an overview on what to expect and told the kids no food, no drink, and no watermelon. It got worse as the visit continued, with Lammy alleging, quote, we were instructed not to touch any of the artifacts in the museum, yet white students there touched the displays several times while security looked on without saying anything." She claims security guards followed them and would yell at her school's students when they followed suit. Lammy attempted to address it at the time, but was reportedly told by one guard that he was just doing his job. Other museum goers were also involved, with one reportedly reacting to a student dancing to music in an exhibit by saying it's a shame that she is not learning and instead stripping.
Declaring racism a public health crisis. That's a resolution signed by County Executive Chris Abele today.
So in effect, this resolution works to address race issues head on. Lauren Winfrey has details on the county's new commitment.
This resolution is one of many measures the county is taking to advance the conversation on racial equity and to promote fair and equitable practices for the people who live here. As the county makes a push toward greater fairness and access for all, County Executive Chris Abele signed a resolution declaring racism a public health crisis he and his colleagues plan to fix.
We need to see racism as a rotting apple tree whose roots are permeating
these systems.
Those systems include education, mass incarceration, and healthcare. Milwaukee resident Frank Nitty considers the resolution a start, but questions its effectiveness.
Right now, it's not enforceable. So the next step would be to make it enforceable. Once it becomes more enforceable, then I'll have more of a seriousness to it.
The resolution is expected to offer a systemic response to systemic racism by exposing biases and implementing race equity training for all 4,400 county employees. County Executive Chris Abley says he wants the topic of race equity to inform decisions about budget and policy moving forward.
We want every single person who works for the county, every decision they make, to be thinking, how can I make this decision in a way that is more effective and more likely to make a difference for these disparities.
I was designed for you to fail, designed for you to suffer, designed for you to die. You and your sisters and brothers, I don't care if you rich or poor. I'ma get you off the streets, I'ma trick you, cause to me, just a nigga. Hey nigga, go shoot this basketball, go throw this football, here take this kilo, go in the hood and cook raw. See, I control everything, and I ain't saying no more. You take a knee, you ain't playing no more. Now who gon' stop me? Pray to your God, but can he hear you? That ain't even the whole Bible. I stole some of the scriptures and gave you a picture of a European man that told you he died for you. Nigga, I lied to you, red, white, and blue. See, the red is for your blood, and the blue is for the water I brought you through then hung. And the white, yeah, nigga, white is for the elite. Now go on, pop your Percocet, continue to stay asleep. Now go on and eat unhealthy, Coke, burgers, and fries. You niggas will rule the world if you just open your eyes. I committed the crime, you really the victim. If you wanna know my name, just call me the system.